Namaskar, this is Sucheta from Koham Yoga and welcome to the third episode of Koham Yoga where I am trying to answer a few questions about yoga that are frequently asked, and I am trying to answer these questions to my capacity and my limited knowledge. The third question that I am going to try and answer today is about flexibility and yoga. I often get asked one interesting question, and that is people say, oh, I'm not flexible enough for yoga. Okay, so a simple answer to them is that yoga will help you be a little more flexible than what you are right now. And a second question related to flexibility is obviously, will yoga help me increase my flexibility? Correct? So, as you can see, I'm going to tackle these sentences, statements, or questions. I am not flexible for yoga. So, obviously, can I start practicing yoga? Will I gain flexibility if I start practicing yoga? So, basically, what we are going to talk about today is flexibility. Okay. So, the first point, find a good teacher. As I always say, if you want to start practicing yoga, learn yoga, and if you're new, or even if you want to advance in your yoga practice, please find a good teacher who understands you, with whom you can talk about your problems, your concerns, your limitations, or any kind of reservations that you may have about your practice. So, first point, find a good teacher who can help you with finding the correct posture or correct level of the same posture that is suitable for your state of body, current state of body. It's always work in progress, correct? So if you are not able to bend forward, backward, sideways in a certain way, then a good teacher will find a correct modification for you. So start with that modification, and for that you will need a good teacher. Second, use of props. Okay. So if your teacher is suggesting you to make use of some props so that you can stay comfortably in certain asana or certain posture, then go ahead and make use of that prop. So it could be a yoga belt, or a teacher may ask you to use dupatta, some heap of books, breaks, or something to keep you on a height, bolsters, a chair. There are so many props that can aid you, help you take a certain posture without any injuries to other parts of the body that are not targeted by that posture, right? So you should not be feeling inferior if you are using props. What happens is, in a class, people try to push themselves into a pose without using props, or without actually mastering the earlier pose, which is a preparatory pose for the next one. So if you rush into achieving a pose, then definitely it will not help you, correct? I always say that the goal of yoga is practice. The goal of yoga is not posture. The goal itself is to be in practice. So if you are constantly in practice, then listen to your teacher, make use of props that are going to help you adjust your current level of range of motion or body, or whatever state you are in, to be in that posture for a longer time. Now, this brings us to a very important point, which is stretch reflex. Okay, now these two points, finding a good teacher and making use of props, were related to the first question. So, if you are struggling there, and if you are thinking whether I should start practice yoga since I am not flexible, and if you have got a good teacher and if you are ready to make use of props, then just go ahead and start practicing. You need not be flexible enough to do yoga, and there's no enough flexibility as such. Now we come to the second question. Will I be flexible? Will I gain more flexibility if I start practicing yoga? For that, we all may have to understand this very interesting concept of stretch reflex. What is a stretch reflex? Okay, when the muscle is lengthened, which happens in yoga poses, correct? We lengthen a muscle. When the muscle is lengthened, then the muscle spindle is stretched, correct? And when the muscle spindle is stretched, it sends a signal. It reaches the nervous system, and these neurons get activated, and this activity increases there. And what happens is that the muscle is contracted because our brain does not want to allow that stretch. The brain rejects the stretch and tries to get the length, the normal length of the muscle back immediately. Isn't this true even for any other activity, any other new activity that we introduce? Isn't it? So generally we are not ready for change, isn't it? So if we are used to a certain routine that we do not want to change that routine, the first reaction is to reject, right? If I'm used to using this marker, and suddenly on one day if I do not find this marker, I say, oh, I don't want that, I don't like the other one, I want this one. That's because I'm used to this, I'm used to using this. So the first reaction is to reject what's new. Similarly, when we stretch and lengthen it, because our body is not used to that length, what happens is the nervous system is going to reject it and say, oh, I do not want this length in my muscle, and it will contract, and so we are going to reject that stretch. So practicing yoga is about overcoming this stretch reflex. So when you overcome this stretch reflex, and when you tell your body that no, this is something that I am going to be doing now, so you better get used to it. So this goes into the muscle memory, and for that you need to do it consistently. This will not happen, you will not overcome the stretch reflex if you do your practice only once in a week. You need to do it consistently. And what aids in overcoming the stretch reflex is breath. And that is the beauty of yoga versus other exercises. In fact, that is the reason why we do not use the word exercise for yoga. We don't say I'm doing yoga exercise. We say I'm practicing yoga. It is my practice, and the practice has to be consistent. The more consistent you are, the better results you get. It is good and true for anything that you take up, correct? And it's true even here. So breath, how breath aids overcoming stretch reflex. Obviously, when you focus on your breath, when you focus on inhaling deeply and exhaling completely, then obviously your nervous system is going to be in a relaxed and calm state. If you keep on breathing shallow, if you keep on breathing at a higher speed, then obviously you are going to be at a different mental state or level, which will again reject the stretch or the length in the muscle, and in turn the reverse will happen, and you will get into contraction, which is not what we want. And that's why yoga also incorporates a lot of breathing techniques. So if you practice both simultaneously, you will be comfortable in holding a certain posture. And the core definition of yoga, or rather yoga asana, is Sthiram Sukham Asanam. And only when you overcome the stretch reflex with the help of breath, you will be in that state of holding the posture or asana sthira with stability, and sukham at a pleasurable or pleasure giving state. So that's another point. And last but not the least is food. what kind of food do you eat also matters a lot. Perfect. So you should be keeping yourself hydrated enough. You should be eating food that's easy for digestion, and basically that helps you feel and keep light, that also lubricates your joints. So these are the types of foods that you should have in your diet, simple foods. Okay, so that is the fifth point. And so let us recap. The first question that we were tackling is, I'm not flexible enough, so can I start practicing yoga? For that I said you find a good teacher who works with you, and feel free to make use of props. So this was an answer for the first question, which is this. And for the second question, will I gain flexibility? I talked about 3 points. How you will gain flexibility is that you may be able to overcome this stretch reflex with consistent and long practice, and with the help of breath, and by eating food which aids flexibility, which keeps your joint lubricated. I hope I was able to answer this question, and I'll see you again in the fourth episode of Oham Yoga. Till then, bye. Namaste.